Have you ever wondered what $85 million worth of family betrayal looks like? I'm June Whitmore. 3 years ago, I walked away from my architecture career, turned down a life-changing project, just to stay by my father's side after his stroke at the Mayo Clinic. While my sister Chloe was checking in from parties in Chicago and Miami, I was learning how to inject insulin at 3 a.m., coordinating therapy schedules, and memorizing every medication as if someone's life depended on it. 8 weeks ago, my father began walking again, and yesterday, he called a family meeting, then handed the entire Whitmore Skyline Group to Chloe, the company, the properties, the 60-year legacy, my share, $50,000 and a pity nod. But here's what people always forget. Invisible daughters are always watching, always learning, and usually preparing something no one expects. If you're watching this, stay with me. One letter is about to change everything. Before I go on, tell me where you're watching this from and what time it is for you right now. I read every single comment because it reminds me that someone out there understands what it feels like to be overlooked in your own family. Now let me take you back to that afternoon. That message arrived at the exact moment I thought the future was finally tilting in my favor. That morning in Minneapolis was so clear, I could hear the wind threading through the glass roof of the studio. The first light of day reflected off the Riverlight Complex blueprint, making every stroke of my pen seem to glow. When the email from Horizon Design Summit popped up, I froze for a few seconds. Congratulations. June, we would like you to present your concept at this year's conference. I touched the screen as if checking whether it was real. If I could appear at that conference, I would finally step onto the national architecture map, the thing I had spent half my life chasing. My colleagues rushed over to hug me. The drawings, the laptop, the light, everything spun around, one feeling. My turn has finally come. I grabbed my coat, ready to run out to the balcony to call my mother, then stopped. She was gone. I gave a bittersweet smile and whispered to myself, she would be proud. It should have been the best morning in years, until my phone vibrated. A message from Mayo Clinic, Gregory Whitmore, emergency condition. Call back immediately. No sunlight could stay warm after those words. One sentence over the phone erased the line between ambition and duty. Your father has had a severe stroke. We need a family member here right away. The doctor's voice cut straight through my chest. I could only grip the phone tighter, my own breathing becoming the only sound I could hear clearly. I left the studio within minutes, not remembering what I packed. The glass door shut behind me, leaving inside all the unfinished dreams. A long hallway, the elevator, my footsteps hitting the floor, like each step was peeling away the future I had just touched. 1 hour later, I stood outside the emergency room at Mayo Clinic. The doctor lifted the curtain, revealing my father. Half his face collapsed, his hand trembling as if trying to hold on to something invisible. He will need long-term therapy, at least many months, possibly years. Everything in my mind went blank. The conference, the opportunity, the career, all of it fading like a painting being torn apart. I signed the treatment authorization with the same hands that once drew buildings I believed would change my life. That night, while watching my father sleep, I knew clearly Riverlight Complex would never bear my name again. Those first days of caring for him were the days I began disappearing from my own life. My world became a loop of tasks, blood sugar tests, medication charts, physical therapy, medical files, insurance documents. I taped treatment schedules everywhere, fridge door, nightstand, next to the coffee machine. The Whitmore house was wide and cold. Every step echoed like a reminder that once 2 people lived here, and now only one, and Chloe. Every night, her stories lit up rooftop parties in Chicago, midnight beaches in Miami, glittering events with lights bright enough to make anyone forget their father was lying motionless in a therapy room. One time I called, just to say Dad missed her. Chloe replied shortly. You've got it, sis. I'm still dealing with a brand. I didn't answer. What was there left to say? I thought I was sacrificing for something worthy. I thought one day he would see, understand, be grateful. But I didn't know this yet. What I called sacrifice. They called supposed to. And the day my father recovered was the day the real disaster began. That wasn't the first time I realized I was only a shadow in my own home. 3 years inside the Whitmore house didn't feel like real time. It felt like a long, quiet, cold loop. Every morning, I opened the curtains so the sunlight could touch my father's face, hoping that today he would speak a little clearer, walk a little steadier, recognize me a little more. Some days he mistook me for my mother. Some days he didn't remember anyone at all. But I remained patient, guiding each step, cooking every meal, documenting every tremor, every pain, every reaction to the medication. And Chloe. She walked in smelling like expensive perfume, snapped a few photos beside his hospital bed, then left before he could even finish a sentence. Every time she visited, I could feel myself disappearing from his eyes because they only lit up when he saw her. One afternoon, while I was helping him practice walking, Chloe breezed in wearing a fur coat, chewing gum as she asked, "Everything good? Sis, I'm only here for a few minutes. I have a brand meeting." I nodded. I always nodded. But inside, I could hear a thin sound like paper tearing. I was trading my entire life for a family that maybe had never noticed. Every time I was overlooked, a small piece of me cracked. The first moment my father's birthday, I prepared everything low-sugar cake, soft lighting, a playlist of the songs he loved before the stroke. When Chloe walked in, she gasped. "Oh, wow. Sis, this looks a bit old-fashioned, doesn't it? Let me handle the visuals." And within minutes, all eyes were on her, not on Dad, not on the birthday. I stood in the kitchen listening to him ask, "Where's Chloe?" even though I was right next to him. The second moment, the Whitmore Skyline Group event. I prepared the report for my father, called partners, handled a small crisis in the Northside division. That day, a major partner shook my hand and said, "I must say, Miss Whitmore, you work very efficiently." I didn't even have time to reply before Gregory, my father, cut in. "June is only helping temporarily. Chloe is the one with the business mind." I stepped back, as if someone had pressed a hand against my chest. Temporarily, I had kept the company from collapsing for 2 years. The third moment, the local newspaper interview, the reporter wanted to write about the quiet daughter caring for her father. I didn't ask for it. They approached me. But that night, Chloe called June. "Don't accept the interview. It looks kind of pathetic. Let me handle the media side." The next day, the article was published without my name. Only a photo of Chloe beside our father, captioned, "The resilient daughter of the Whitmore family." I read that line 3 times, and something inside me went dark. But all those times I was pushed to the side still weren't as painful as the moment I watched myself vanish from our family's own story. The moment I realized I had been erased was the moment I understood everything had been staged long ago. I discovered it by accident during an online meeting with the PR team of Whitmore Skyline Group. The screen split, slides moving gently. The Whitmore family, a journey of recovery. After crisis, I meant to skim through it, but then my eyes stopped on a sentence that made my back go cold. For the past 3 years, Chloe Whitmore has supported her father through the difficult therapy process. Next to the text was a collection of photos, all showing Chloe standing beside our father, smiling, gently resting a hand on his shoulder. No me, no therapy room, no nights I stayed awake because he couldn't breathe, no trembling hands of mine catching him in those earliest days. I scrolled down. Next slide, young leader of the company during the transition period. A photo of Chloe in my father's office, the office I had cleaned for months, captioned the natural successor. It felt like someone had pulled the ground out from under me. A hurtful sentence can wound, but being erased from history, that's another level of betrayal. I closed my laptop, but my hands were still numb. For the first time, I asked myself if I disappeared completely. Would anyone in this family notice one wrong email and the entire facade began to crack? That evening, while preparing my father's medication, my phone buzzed. An email sent by mistake. From the internal PR department to Chloe, but redirected to me. The content was just one line. Revised timeline to make Chloe appear as the one leading the recovery process. Awaiting approval to include in succession planning. I read it 3 times. Succession. Power. Heir. I looked toward the living room where my father was sleeping, and I understood Chloe wasn't chosen accidentally. She had been preparing for that day for a very long time. And the cruelest part, I still didn't know that the upcoming family meeting would bury every sacrifice I had ever made. That night, I sat in the dark and, for the first time, truly felt the disappearance of myself. I sat alone in the living room, the warm yellow light spilling through windows dusted with Minneapolis snow. On the table, my laptop was still open to the misdirected email, each word slicing coldly. Adjust timeline, so Chloe leads the recovery process. I stared at that sentence until the letters blurred. For 3 years, I had never once asked to be acknowledged. I only wanted my father to recover. I only wanted my family back. I only wanted something that resembled fairness. Yet with just a few photos, a few lines of PR, a few appearances for show, Chloe had become the protagonist of a story I had lived through every single day. I inhaled deeply. The house was so silent I could hear the heater trembling softly. My father was sleeping in the next room, still weak, still needing me, still unaware that outside his therapy hours, people had rewritten everything about him and about me. The darkness in the house didn't feel like it came from the night. It felt like it came from my own loneliness. There are truths that only appear when we dare to look directly at ourselves. I stood and walked into the bathroom, switching on the light. The white glow fell harshly across my face in the mirror, dark circles. Hastily tied hair, shoulders slightly hunched from months of bending down to guide him step by step. I looked at myself the way one might look at a stranger. 3 years ago, I was June Whitmore, a young architect full of ambition and light. Now, I looked like a faded version of her, exhausted, dimmed, voiceless in my own home. I touched the mirror. My fingertips were cold. Is this really my life? The question escaped like frozen breath in the air. I remembered the nights I stayed awake for him, the smell of medicine, the beeping of the heart monitor, the words he saved for Chloe despite her visits lasting only minutes. I wondered, when I needed a compliment, a thank you, or simply to be seen, who was there for me? A simple question, but sharp enough to cut through the heart. I stood in the middle of the Whitmore house, wide, quiet, cold. A thought drifted in, soft as wind but heavy as stone, pressing onto my chest. If I disappeared tomorrow, would anyone in this house notice? It wasn't a question about existence. It was a question about worth. I had sacrificed everything: my career, my dreams, my youth. For what? A supporting role in a story written by someone else. I closed my eyes, and in that moment, I knew the real storm was about to begin. There are documents that are never meant for someone like me to see. That night, I reopened the internal system of Whitmore Skyline Group, the same system I had accessed thousands of times to support my father through the 3 years he spent in the hospital. But this time, I wasn't looking for anything for him. I was looking for myself. The file recovery leadership timeline opened. At first glance, it looked harmless dates, photos, PR reports. But as I scrolled down, my heartbeat slowed. Below a photo of Chloe speaking with a doctor, the caption read, "Lead Coordinator Chloe Whitmore." I remembered that exact day. Chloe was not there. I was the one speaking with the doctor. I opened another file. In the family engagement report, the note read, "June provides administrative support. Chloe is responsible for key decisions." I nearly laughed a dry, heatless sound. I was in the room the day my father was transferred from ICU to the therapy ward. Chloe was posting bikini photos in Miami. Something was wrong. Not wrong in the documents themselves. Wrong in the intention. These lines were crafted for one purpose only: to push me out of the role of eldest daughter and replace me with Chloe as the natural leader. I leaned back in my chair, my fingers tightening around the mouse. I didn't know who edited these files, but I knew exactly who benefited from them. Chloe spoke with a smile, but her eyes carried a warning. The next morning, I ran into her in the kitchen. She was pouring coffee, caramel scent spreading through the room. When she saw me, she smiled, a smile held a second too long, like something rehearsed in front of a mirror. "You're up early," she said, voice soft as mist. "There was something interesting to read last night," I replied. She turned her head, the smile not moving, but her gaze sharpening. "What are you talking about? Internal documents? Things that seem like they've been rewritten." She set down her cup, tilting her head. "June, sometimes you confuse your memories with reality. You've been under stress for too long." The sentence landed like a velvet-covered knife, not harsh, not direct, but carrying the message: I'm the one who controls this narrative. I met her eyes. "Chloe, you know exactly who was here for these 3 years." She shrugged. "Yeah, but the question is, who will be here for the next 3? That answer sent a chill straight down my spine. If you're still watching, comment the number 1. I want to know how many of you were just like me in that moment. The way my father looked at Chloe that night, it was as if my place had never existed. He sat in the living room, the warm yellow light making his face look both familiar and distant. Chloe sat close beside him, while I sat across like an outsider staring at a picture already arranged without me. "This weekend, we'll have a family meeting," he said. His voice was calm, coldly calm. I asked, "About what?" He didn't answer me. He looked at Chloe. "She'll tell you." Chloe turned to me, smiling lightly as if delivering her assigned dialogue. "You just need to be there. Everything is already prepared." A cold line crawled down my spine. 3 years of hospitals, therapy schedules, medications, and now, even the right to know what was happening didn't belong to me anymore. As he stood, my father placed a hand on Chloe's shoulder. "I'm proud of you." A simple sentence, but it struck exactly where it hurt most. Not because he praised her, but because he forgot I was standing right there. A flash of text appeared in my mind and all the pieces snapped into place. Out in the hallway, I noticed a folder sticking out of Chloe's bag. Bold letters on the edge of the papers. "Whitmore Skyline. Leadership Transition Plan. Leadership Transition Plan. Dated for this very year." No one told me. No one asked for my opinion. No one even informed me that such a plan existed. I wasn't being excluded by accident. I had been excluded by design long, long ago. And I had no idea that the meeting that weekend would be the moment everything collapsed right in front of my eyes. Just one envelope was enough to detonate that entire room of power. The North Star Grand Ballroom glowed like a winter gala, crystal chandeliers casting cold halos over black suits and satin dresses worn by Minneapolis investors. No one knew tonight would be an earthquake. Chloe stood near the stage, her red dress catching the light, her smile perfectly rehearsed, her hand gripping the microphone as if she could already see herself crowned official heir. My father, Charles Whitmore, was shaking hands with board members, carrying the confidence of a man who believed he controlled everything. And I, June, sat quietly in the fourth row. No one turned. No one asked why I was there. That familiar feeling invisibility suddenly felt strangely calm. Reporters from Business North, Twin City Ledger, and Real Estate Chronicle were waiting for the new CEO announcement. Cameras, lights, murmurs all ticking like a countdown. Chloe adjusted her hair and whispered to a PR friend, "They're finally going to see what they should have seen long ago." I looked up at the chandelier. If they thought I came to watch Chloe's coronation, tonight would prove how wrong they were. The line between order and chaos is sometimes just a signature on an envelope. Charles stepped up to the podium as the clock hit 7 p.m. "Thank you all for joining us to celebrate an important milestone for the Whitmore family." His voice was steady, confident, seasoned the same tone he'd used for years leading the company through the press. Chloe stood beside him, posing for the spotlight as though shooting for the local Forbes cover. I glanced at my watch. 2 minutes left. Whitmore Skyline Group is entering a new chapter. Right then, the ballroom doors swung open. A courier in a navy coat walked straight down the aisle without hesitation. Every whisper stopped as if someone had cut the sound. "Mr. Charles Whitmore." His voice was loud enough for the whole room. Charles frowned. "This is not express delivery. Signature required. Marked. Must be delivered at scheduled time." My eyes met the courier's for one breath. He gave a subtle nod. The room went dead silent as my father signed the receipt. He tore the envelope open. The instant he saw the contents, his face changed. Chloe was still smiling, clueless. But I knew everything was about to fall apart. When Charles opened the letter, the entire room inhaled, then froze. He stared at the page, then lifted his eyes, stopping exactly at the fourth row, where I sat. His expression shifted from surprise to losing control. "June, what is this?" The question hit the microphone and exploded into hundreds of whispers. Chloe frowned and stepped closer. "Daddy, just continue. Don't let..." But he cut her off. "You secured the Technodyne contract." The room went silent. Some people actually stood up. Chloe laughed, desperately trying to save face. "Daddy, you misunderstood. Technodyne is the software company I've been..." A deep male voice from the VIP table cut in. "We're a biomedical corporation." "Miss Chloe." Every head turned. Technodyne's CEO Elliot Graham rose to his feet. He looked directly at me. "And yes, the person we selected for our new headquarters project is Miss June Whitmore." Chloe froze, her mouth open with no sound coming out. "That's impossible. She doesn't do architecture," Elliot replied evenly. "We evaluated 27 anonymous portfolios. Miss June's submission ranked first by a wide margin." Camera lights swung toward me. I stood. My voice wasn't loud, but each word carried, "Dad never asked what I've been doing for the past 3 years. So tonight, he'll hear it along with everyone else." Chloe lunged toward the mic. "This is my stage." I looked straight at her. "Not tonight." I walked toward the stage, and the reporters instinctively stepped aside to clear a path. No one stopped me. No one told me to sit down. It was as if the room finally recognized the person who should have been on that stage all along was never Chloe. If Charles thought this was a misunderstanding, the truth was about to cost him far more than he imagined. A single truth, revealed at the right moment, can topple an entire dynasty. I stepped onto the stage. The spotlight hit me warm, but sharp like a verdict. Chloe backed away. Charles gripped the podium as if needing something to hold him upright. Tonight, I began. Everyone came expecting to witness a new generation of Whitmore skyline. I paused. The ballroom lights flickered slightly, as if the room itself sensed what was coming. I want to introduce something no one in my family ever cared to ask about. I signaled the media team. Instantly, the LED screen behind me lit up the first page of my portfolio cue. Whitmore Design Lab founder and lead architect, June Whitmore. A wave of murmurs rippled through the room. Chloe covered her mouth. Charles glared at me. You started your own company. I held his gaze. I built it on the nights you slept after therapy, when you thought I was just running errands. Next slide, Harborview Community Center. Award-winning redesign. Then Nordic Medical Pavilion. Sustainability score, Platinum candidate. Each project flashed across the screen like a slap to the narrative they'd fabricated for 3 years. Elliot Graham spoke up. And this is why Technodyne chose June. The final slide appeared. Technodyne Headquarters Project. $45 million. Signed, sealed, awarded to June Whitmore. Camera shutters erupted like fireworks. An investor whispered loudly, "Oh my God, that's the biggest contract of the year." Charles stepped forward, voice cracking. "You went behind the family's back." I turned to him, calm but sharp. "No, Dad. I did the one thing you never allowed me to do. I built myself." Silence swallowed the entire ballroom. And in that exact moment, the market began to react. A chain collapse faster than anything the Whitmore family could have imagined. The silence in the ballroom lasted only 3 seconds before the entire room erupted. The ballroom shattered into layers of noise. Investors shot up from their seats, firing questions at Charles like arrows. "How long have you been hiding the company's real condition? The biggest contract landed in the hands of someone outside the organization. How do you explain that? Chloe can't even tell biomedical from software. And you were going to hand her the company." Charles tried to stay composed, but his hands trembled visibly. And Chloe still stood under the spotlight, the color draining from her face. I did work with Technodyne." A reporter immediately cut her off. "Then please describe their primary product." Chloe froze. A heavy, humiliating silence filled the air. Then camera shutters began clicking. An investor spoke loudly, not even pretending to whisper. "She doesn't even know what the company does." I stood a few steps from the stage, watching as everything they had tried to hide finally ignited on its own. A document fell to the floor. Someone muttered coldly, "We're withdrawing from the collaboration." The heartbeat of the room shifted. No one could stop the collapse now. News spread faster than anyone in that ballroom could run from it. Within 1 hour, every major and minor outlet in the region blasted bright red headlines. Whitmore's Skyline launch night disaster. Chloe Whitmore, the heir who doesn't know what Technodyne is. Ballroom breakdown goes viral in Minneapolis. The clip of Charles reading the letter, voice trembling. Eyes stunned, became the centerpiece of the scandal. People reposted it with comments ranging from fury to disappointment to outright mockery. Social media flooded with memes about Chloe. Someone edited her face onto a meme with the caption, "CEO of whatever that is," under Technodyne's official post. Hundreds of comments piled up. "Please confirm your industry for Chloe." Meanwhile, my inbox blew up. Applications from young architects wanting to join Whitmore Design, collaboration offers from construction firms. 3 television networks requesting interviews. 2 medical design foundations asking for meetings. I stood by the hotel window, watching the endless stream of headlines. The spread was too fast, far too fast for the Whitmore family to contain. Dominoes never fall alone, they drag the whole empire down. The next morning, Minneapolis woke up to a fever called Whitmore Skyline. The stock graph dropped like someone had cut its wires down 9% at market open. A live analyst on Twin City Business commented, Investors are reacting to leadership distrust, not the project. Charles's phone rang non-stop, but most calls were demands, accusations, or requests to delay deals. 3 partners emailed with the same cold message. All transactions paused until Whitmore Skyline stabilizes senior leadership. The harshest blow came from Summit Construction, their oldest partner. They posted publicly on LinkedIn. We cannot collaborate with a leadership team lacking transparency and industry understanding. Chloe saw the post. I heard something shatter in her room, sharp, brittle, hopeless. But the heaviest hit came hours later. 3 mid-level managers, the people who kept the company running, submitted their resignations. One of them messaged me privately. If you're hiring, I want to apply. At the same time, my account pinged. The first transfer from Technodyne completed. An amount large enough to rewrite anyone's destiny. Last night's ballroom started the collapse. Today's market finished it. Whitmore Skyline was shaking at its roots. Families can withstand disappointment, but not humiliation. The Whitmore mansion was dark except for the living room, where warm light revealed the strained faces of everyone inside. Chloe sat curled up, mascara smeared, repeating over and over. "Why is everything falling on me?" Charles snapped. "Because you don't know anything. You didn't even know what Technodyne does. You embarrassed me. Why didn't you tell me the truth from the start? Why did you force me into that position?" Their voices clashed like breaking glass. I stood on the staircase, not entering. I used to wish to be included in these conversations. Now, I no longer belong to them. Charles finally saw me. His eyes no longer held authority, only fear. "June," his voice was hoarse. "You have to help me. The company, it's collapsing." I didn't answer, because he didn't know this was only the beginning of the price he would have to pay. When the phone rang, I knew immediately it was no longer the voice of a CEO. My father called me close to 10 p.m. His voice was hoarse, filled with pauses I had never heard from him before. "June, I need to see you." I looked out the office window. Minneapolis glittered under a thin layer of snow, and the reflection on my glass wall showed one simple truth: I was no longer beneath them. "I'm busy all week. If you want to meet, Thursday, 4 p.m. In the past, he could summon me any time he wanted. Tonight, he only exhaled softly. "All right. 4 o'clock. On the day of the meeting, Charles arrived alone. No secretary, no advisor, no Chloe. Just a man who had lost the confidence he'd relied on for half his life. He walked into my office, glancing at the drawings on the wall, the things he never once stopped to look at when we lived under the same roof. I offered him a seat. He didn't sit right away. It was as if he was trying to retrieve a kind of authority that he himself had dropped. "June, the company is slipping out of control. I need you." I didn't answer immediately. I simply observed him. 3 years, he hadn't looked straight at me like this in 3 years. "We talk when you're ready to listen," I said, then gently closed the conference room door behind us. This wasn't a father-daughter conversation. This was a new balance of power. Charles sat down, hands clasped. "The board is furious. They want Chloe removed from leadership until you support the company's stabilization." "Support," I repeated softly. "You mean replace the very role this family erased for 3 years?" He closed his eyes for a second, swallowing his pride. "June, I know you're angry, but this is family. You can't. This isn't a family matter." I cut in. "This is business. And you know I'm right." I placed a folder on the table. "You want collaboration. Fine. Here are my conditions. 1. My company. Whitmore Design Lab operates entirely independently. Whitmore Skyline cannot interfere with any internal decisions. 2. All collaboration projects profits split 50-50. No exceptions. 3. Chloe must complete a 2-year executive management program before returning to any role related to leadership. 4. No family priority. No special privileges, only competence. Charles read each line, hesitation flickering in his eyes. You're putting conditions on your own father? I tilted my head slightly. No, I'm putting conditions on the CEO of Whitmore Skyline Group. That sentence flipped the switch. He understood our positions had reversed. Finally. Charles picked up the pen. His hand trembled slightly, but enough to notice, and he signed. When he set the pen down, he whispered, so soft it barely reached me. You're the only one who can save this company, I replied, calm and steady. I'm not saving anyone. I'm protecting what I built with my own hands. A small key, strong enough to unlock the biggest truth of the last 3 years. Before leaving, Charles paused at the door. He took out an old silver key and placed it in my hand. Your mother kept this. I think. It belongs to you. In a small storage room behind our family's old warehouse, I found the boxes my mother had preserved for years. My very first sketches, architecture exam papers, I thought she never saw. And a handwritten envelope. For June, when you find yourself. I opened it. Inside was just one line. You don't need anyone's permission to shine. You just need to stop asking for it. I stood in that old room, sunlight slipping through the cracks, warm, simple, gentle like the final period of a long chapter. Or the opening line of the next. I hadn't decided yet. Sometimes, true peace isn't something we find, it's what remains after everything has already collapsed. That morning, I stood in my new office, the first sunlight touching the wooden desk as if someone had placed a quiet congratulations on it. Minneapolis stretched out before me, the buildings, the streets, the rhythms of life I used to watch through a hospital window 3 years ago. Today, everything felt strangely calm. No more beeping monitors, no more therapy schedules taped to every wall. No more eyes looking past me as if I were merely the metronome for someone else's life. I placed my hand on the newest design for Technodyne's lab. A clear feeling rose within me. I didn't win against anyone in this story. I simply chose not to lose myself one more time. And sometimes, that alone is enough to rewrite the destiny of an entire life. You are not invisible. You're just standing in the wrong place. If you're still listening to me now, maybe somewhere in my story, you see a reflection of your own. Maybe you've been overlooked. Maybe you've had to shrink yourself to fit into a mold someone else built. Maybe you've sat in your own home feeling like an intruder. I want you to know this something that took me 3 years to understand. Choosing yourself isn't selfish. Setting boundaries isn't turning your back on your family. It's simply protecting the kindest part of you. And just like me, you don't need anyone to grant you permission. You've had the right all along. It's only today that you finally dare to use it. Every journey deserves a beautiful goodbye. Thank you for walking with me to the end of this story, a story about hurt, choices, and the freedom found after stepping out of a place that no longer holds space for you. If my journey touched something in you, don't forget to like and subscribe so I can share more meaningful and powerful stories with you. See you in the next story.